Hey all, this is Mike,
And this is Paxton.
and welcome to the Mad LiberTEA Party, where up is down, left is right, the rum is always gone, and the world is full of clowns.
Feel like the world's gone mad? Then pull up a chair and we'll throw you a teacup because we're all mad here.
We certainly are, and speaking of us all being mad here, we think maybe it's time that you guys get to meet some of the other loonies that have been hanging out with us here at the Mad LiberTEA Party. Today, we have with us Pence, that's what we call them. Um, they're pretty awesome. It's no relation to the horrible dude that we don't want
We're
to
taking it back.
accidentally be
We're
president.
taking it back.
We're taking it back. If we sit in Discord together, it spells out Mike Pence, and it's great. But I've known Pence for a while, and Paxton is just barely getting to know them. But they've been around here, hanging out with us at the community for a bit, and starting to help out. They're actually one of our active mentors that, like, you know, takes an interest in the people around here and tries to help them and stuff like that. And also, like, they help us, like, pass things around and get people excited about stuff and all sorts of things. They're also a rather interesting addition to the conversation.
Yeah, so usually we like to start off with pretty simple questions just so everyone can kind of get an idea of who we're talking to. So that being said, is there any like introductory stuff that you would like to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure. First and foremost, my name is Pence, not because I like that guy. I was Pence a lot longer than he's ever been on the television. And I went through kind of a phase where I wasn't sure if I was going to keep the name, and I decided I'm going to keep it because
They decided
yeah.
not to let the terrorist win.
Don't let the terrorists win. I really love community. I love when community gets it right. I love it when community brings out the best in the people that are involved in it. And Mike's always had like this crazy knack for bringing people together. And yeah, I want to do whatever I can to help the people in this community be the best version of themselves that they want to be.
I'm totally not puffed up behind all of this fabric.
So when you say, so the two things that I want to talk about, because it's not every day that we get to talk to somebody that's from, a different country that's come over here and been educated in the other country. So first, let's talk about like nationalism and things like that. Do you have a certain affinity or loyalty to Canada over America, America over Canada? Does
Are
any of
you
that
allowed
stuff
to
matter
say
to
that
you?
without getting deported?
I think it's a
Um,
given. I mean, look at all I mean, Ben Shapiro, for example. He
oh,
loves
yeah.
Israel more than the United States, so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, it's
I
strange.
kind of.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry.
No,
I was
fuck Mike.
just. No, you talk. This is about you.
I love Canada. I absolutely love Canada.
Someone
But
has to.
America's, well, yeah, right. I mean, both of us are really great up there. No, I'm kidding. I'm okay. No, America's. I've been in America for the last 10 years, and I love it. I really love the people. I mean, I definitely see some differences based on um, comparing like the country where I grew up and the country that I've come to know here. Um, so just Canada and US are not allowed to go to war because I don't know what I'd do.
I was just about to say, that would be an interesting
That would be
combination.
awful. Like,
I
I
mean,
have so many Canadian friends.
obviously you
Right.
have to root for the winners, so of course you would be pro-America, so.
Well,
Uh,
I mean, how many times can you blow us up, really?
I
I
don't
guess
know,
we'll
as
find out.
Korea and Vietnam and every other place. It's going to be weird because y'all don't have like a lot of brown people up there, so I'm not sure we're going to be able to do it very well. It's going to be interesting. We might
Oh
actually
my
lose this one.
god. No.
So that being said, is there a large cultural or societal difference that you can tell from Canada to America? Like, is there a
Yeah.
big difference between the people?
Yeah, people think that because we both speak English, and we both watch Law and Order or whatever the hell, same kind of TV. We're both like predominantly white Judeo-Christian, nations, that somehow we must be interchangeable. I don't find that to be my experience. I like to describe it to people who've asked me. In Canada, if you go to a restaurant and you have a shitty time, maybe the food was awful, maybe the service was awful, your waitress will come by and say, "Hey, is everything all right? Are you guys okay?" And of course you say, "Yeah, we're having a great time. Thank you so much for asking." Even if it's a shit time. You come up to pay your bill and it's like, "Hey, was it everything to what you were expecting?" And you're like, "Oh yeah, it was great." And we'll leave and never go back to that restaurant again. It just won't happen. We will, if anybody asks us, we're like, "No, we prefer not to dine there." Where if an American comes into a restaurant and they don't bring them enough breadsticks, the waitress is gonna know, the manager's gonna know, they're gonna send a letter to corporate, they're gonna do a YouTube video, they're gonna have like some sort of like fucking Twitter feeds about it.
Have you ever been to the South?
We'll go on Yelp. We're gonna give you a bad Yelp review.
Yeah,
Just
that's it.
you
We're
wait.
gonna massacre you on Yelp.
See,
you lose
I've always
social
said that the
credit.
South is just Canada, or Canada is the South with fucking mooses, I guess. Or moose. I don't know what y'all say.
Well, honestly, like, if you get a chance to listen to them tell these stories about, like, growing out in the rural areas and shit, like, it doesn't seem that different from us country folk. It's just,
Really
like,
doesn't.
it's real cold there and it was real hot here.
Yeah, I think rural people all generally act the same. Usually they have a strong sense of community, and everybody tries to be polite to one another and everything else. And that's typically how it is in a lot of the southern areas.
Ruggedness.
But there's something really, I think one of the key differences that I've seen between Canadians and Americans. And if anybody's back in the motherland and they hear me say this, I'm right. If something's wrong in the community in Canada, people will say amongst themselves, you're like, "Isn't that a shame? Isn't that awful? Oh man, I wonder, somebody is dropping the ball over there. Somebody should really fix that. That is just, isn't that a shame? I hate that. Isn't that awful?" Where an American, like, is talking to another American, it's like, "Did you see that? Like, yeah, you get your fucking boots. I'm going to get my gloves. We're going to go do something about that." And that kind of self-starting kind of ambition. I know, it's a huge country. Maybe not all communities are the same, but that just seems to be my experience.
No, there's lots of people in America that are still like that do that. We're an industrious people. We've always been the kind of people that have to adapt and I mean, Canadians, y'all didn't pick a fucking super welcoming place to stay either. It's like Americans, Canadians, and Mexicans found like a super inhospitable place and decided it would be a real good day spa or some shit. What is wrong with us?
And no further.
What is wrong with us?
I think we just got tired of hauling our shit, and we were like, you know what? It's got to be here or nowhere.
This is good enough.
Canada, come for the beavers, stay for the poutine.
Beavers.
That's basically Canada's entire history.
And they have poutine in Oklahoma all the time.
That's It's very, very rare. Go fuck yourself, Mike.
No. Up in Canada,
all my friends in Oklahoma, not all of them, but a lot of my friends in Oklahoma talk about it all the time. So I just assume you guys eat it. Maybe I just have weird friends.
They fuck it up. Like, there's one restaurant that I went to because it was like I was really wanting to.
Don't go to restaurants. Learn how to make it.
That's two very different things. You make it sound like I can go to Chili's down the street and order fucking poutine, you asshole.
I don't
like. Of course, I can make.
No. Paxton got it. Paxton got it right there. So up in Canada, we have poutine, and in Oklahoma, you got poutine. Is what you got.
No. You really want to hear?
And in Russia, they have Putin.
The Americanized version of it. So they fucking take the French fries and then the cheese curds, but they use fucking like a cheddar cheese curds,
Oh,
and then
no.
they put pepper gravy on it instead
That's,
of
yeah,
fucking. Oh man, I'm like, what the fuck are you
uh,
monsters doing?
that's poutine, all right.
That is like, fuck
Yeah.
you guys. 1-star Yelp review. Fuck. What the fuck
Well,
is your
you know what
corporate
that,
number?
do you know what the word means? Poutine?
Something about beavers, I would imagine.
Everything's
What
always
does it mean?
beavers with you,
What
Paxton.
does it
God.
mean?
Beavers and mooses
It-
is
It
all.
it
literally
says-
means it literally means mess.
Oh,
It's
that's
a
fair.
mess. Yeah.
Well, it is kind of a mess.
So if
I
you
like
want
it though.
you want a mess of like cheese gravy and fries, I mean that's poutine.
Well,
Yeah, see, I ruin shit. I'm all down here being like, what if we put some chorizo on that too?
let's.
Like,
Okay,
holy fuck, man.
it took me a long time to like get over this whole chili on fries thing that y'all do. That was fucking weird. I'm like, why are you putting this on your French fries? You're just supposed to like putting them together was weird for me.
Let's go to a different subject. That way we don't have to title this
Yeah.
poutine recipe. So you mentioned that you have like a paganistic religion. Do you want to go into like details on that, like how you got involved in that first of all? Because a lot of people, paganism seems to be on a growth spurt lately, but I
Mhm.
very rarely hear people tell me how they got involved in that first place. How do you start as a Christian and go like, you know what, the Vikings were right. They got a lot of silver things from the English. You know,
Right? You know, I mean, like Christian religion, you're always throwing your money into the plate. You know, once I started taking out of it, I realized, you know, definitely Viking blood. No, I'm kidding.
are you though?
So let's start with
Just call it a
religion
tax.
versus. Let's start with religion versus spirituality. So religion is essentially here's this codified morality. This is this way that you're going to go about doing a relationship with a higher power. And this is specifically how you do it. This is specifically what is allowed and what is not allowed. These are your codes of behavior. And you're going to use your self-discipline to change yourself, to align yourself to this platonic ideal. Spirituality is kind of like the flip side of that. Instead of aligning you, changing who you are and changing what you believe and changing your ethics to match something that's prescribed for you, you instead take a look at yourself and your own ethics and your own values, and you find a way to relate to a higher power through what you believe and your values. So I guess in a way you could say, like, in Christianity you move towards God, and in paganism you find gods that move towards you.
That sounds like work.
It does.
is.
It is a lot of work.
Yeah, paganism is not a sit on the pews once a week kind of religion. Not even like I'm pagan spiritualist. Like I believe in all sorts of things. I have a very eclectic practice myself, and like
Right.
you can't. It's not a pew sitting religion at all.
So
No.
as someone, whenever I was younger, I was training to be a pastor, and so I had to research a lot of the religions. We didn't even bother with paganism because prior to, a couple of years ago, it wasn't really a big thing. It seems to be a more modern thing.
You're hidden in corners.
Yeah, just like the snakes that were driving out of Ireland. But I really don't know a lot about paganism compared to other religions and how they go about their like daily lives. So can you give an example of like what would be the equivalent of Christian prayer to like paganism, or like a sermon to paganism, or how does any of that work?
So
Like what is your religious activities?
well, there are, just like some Christians don't go to church and don't align themselves with a certain denomination or a certain or really involve other people in their religion. There are pagans who are what we call solitary practitioners.
That's me.
Yeah, So they don't fuck with other people. Other people don't really have a place in their spirituality. Where other people will have groups, depending on what flavor of paganism you have. It could be a growth, it could be a coven, it could be a group that gets together on Friday nights. Paganism is so like vast, and I think that's by nature of the beast, so to speak, because religion is all about, well, we're going to subscribe to this set of beliefs, and the closer you ascribe your life to this, the better Christian or Buddhist or whatever you are.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with paganism, I mean, it's kind of a self-exploration. So you're going to see like a lot of different
there are
flavors.
teachings of morality and shit peppered throughout things and stuff like that, but it's not, quite the same.
Right. I mean, my personal brand of paganism relies heavily on reciprocity. So if I have somebody in my family who's sick, if I have a job interview, if I have a really rough week coming ahead, I have relationships with certain, I guess you could call them deities, spiritual forces, whatever you want to call it. And I give offerings or sacrifices, like in church, people give like a tithe of their money. I will give certain things of meaning and purpose in order for them to be received and me to receive something in return, like on an interview or healing from my family.
I see. So, is there a particular reason why you think you went towards a paganistic practice compared to, another religion, like, maybe Islam or Sikhism or anything like that? Was it just that it wasn't necessarily organized, and that's what pushed you over to paganism?
I think it was the realization that my religious education had told me a lot about who God was, and that education was manipulated depending on what people wanted from me. If they wanted me to volunteer more, then God was only, a God who liked action. If I was somebody who had more money at some point than another, then suddenly it didn't matter what I did so much as how much I gave. And I think it was that kind of perversion of, well, what is spirituality? What is, a higher power, that kind of brought me like away from that codified religion and more into, well, what really is deity, and wanting to explore that in a less rigid fashion.
I see. So, well, do you have any questions, Mike?
I mean, I wanted to ask, do you have anything more on this kind of subject, or do you want to move on to something new? Because, I think that I don't know what to ask.
I'm
oh God, Cloud Tonic, it's fine. I wanted
don't-
to ask, I was like, you and I have known each other for a really long time, but sometimes I walk my friends into weird places, and I don't really tell them where they're going. And I feel like I kind of maybe did that here. I'm not really sure, but since we're talking about all of the members of the community and stuff, I wanted to know what you thought about it, how you feel about being here, what you do here, and stuff like that. And
what I
the
feel about Mad
community,
Liberty
not
Party.
necessarily the show.
Okay. Well, the community is amazing. When I first walked in here, I think I had a conversation with, and I'm not gonna throw around labels because I hate labels, but I had a conversation with somebody who's
a fascist.
It had been an in-person, a fascist. There we go. And that's usually a fight on sight for me, and I was really ready to be offended. I was really ready to be, ready for a conflict. And Mike said, hold on and hear him out. And, maybe you can
I wasn't
learn
like,
something.
don't listen to what he says,
and it was a really
obviously.
actually...
Mike does not condone that.
No, I mean, yeah. No. And like Mike wasn't saying like, hey, you should be a fascist.
Yeah.
That's totally, it's gonna make your life better. But he was totally right, like being able to actually hear somebody as a person, and not just their political views, and see, maybe why they chose what they chose, and why their ideals are what they are. I learned a lot. I actually learned a lot more in one conversation than I did with a lot of other people telling me what they thought about fascists. And I was like, what an amazing opportunity. Like there's a lot of people who hang around in the server. For people who don't know about the Discord server, you should join and definitely
we'll
have
have
some
a
shenanigans with
there.
us. I don't agree with like most of people that come through the server, but I always learn something from the conversations. I always like, people get heated and people get heightened, and but there's always really like stuff being talked about that I haven't been exposed to before. I hadn't thought about before. I didn't realize was an issue. I hadn't thought about in like the kind of light or perspective that has been like presented. And like, what an opportunity to like educate yourself through a community,
And
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the interesting thing about all of this. Trying to aspire to actually use freedom of speech and actually have open communication, because there's plenty of organizations out there that talk about that and say they're pro that. Like we were just trying to work with a libertarian Discord
wanted to
server the
go
other
in
day, and they
and
give you the third degree to try to join, and that you're not true libertarian enough, or we get to rate you as a true libertarian. Like, are you fucking kidding
Yeah,
me?
I
We're
got
supposed to be the party of
gatekeeped, I guess.
activism, volunteers, freedom of speech, freedom,
Got
and
gatekept.
Well, I don't know. They said
it's
they were gonna.
exactly
They
what we
basically did the thing to validate me, but by the time they validated me, I was so alienated, and I saw that like my other friend was being pushed in a way I was uncomfortable with, so I didn't stay.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
that's how you get echo chambers. That's how like, pardon the coarse language. That's how you get like a bunch of like a huge circle jerk of, people just validating
I
each other's
understand people not
exact
wanting a bunch of
same.
trolls and stuff like that. Like, there was one server that we went into to try and like make some more anarchist and libertarian connections, and they were asking an awful lot of questions at the beginning, and I was like, are we being gatekeeped? And then somebody was like, that's an awful lot of questions, y'all. And they were like, we're sorry, we just have had troll problems and shit. And we were like, oh, well, we're definitely not trolls. Can we stay? And they were like, yeah.
Right. I mean, I understand people being like, oh, I feel like I'm like wasting a lot of time and energy on trolls and stuff. But I mean, personally, and this is not a popular opinion, but I think trolls are great for
very
communities.
active trolls here. But they're also productive
Right.
too.
But I mean, learning, and I mean, when your community learns how to deal with trolls, how to deal with people, when you learn how to deal with people who are different, who are problematic, who are, hard to deal with, I mean, that creates community resilience. When it's not keeping your community from struggle that creates strong communities. It's learning together in a way that doesn't destroy, but actually makes your community better. Like, that's rad. So I think fucking bring on the trolls then,
It's the best example though, and Mike brings this up a lot, is when there's pieces of shit that are in your server, people don't just like let them
they
exist
make
or
them more.
coexist.
They
If you're a piece of
say
shit, you're gonna
something
know
about
about it. We encourage people to speak out. Yeah, exactly. That's what we need to do. We don't need censorship for racism and things
We
of
need
that
to all
nature.
be
We
able
don't
to
need
turn
laws. We don't
around
need
when
full
somebody goes, we're having a great conversation, and somebody pops in and goes, well, it's because of the Jews. We need to all be able to turn around and go, get out of here.
Yeah, like that happened the other day. We were talking about Holocaust denial or some shit like that, and uh, they were getting mad because it's a freedom of speech server. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly right. I'm using my freedom of speech to call you a fucking retard. Like, you have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. I'm letting you say what you want. I didn't delete what you said. I want people to see what the fuck you said because it's fucking
This is gonna
dumb.
be here forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if anything, I want to
Don't
pin
worry.
this.
This
I want to
is going
pin this
nowhere.
right now. Yeah, screenshot this shit, send it to Twitter. You're fucking famous, my dude. Like,
So,
like I don't understand
up
why
in-
people don't want to do that.
Up in Canada, we had social studies, and we had our regular social studies teacher. She was out on maternity leave because we have that in Canada. Y'all should think about getting in the U.S. Just saying. She was out, and so we had an interim teacher, and that interim teacher didn't teach us a whole lot of the curriculum, but definitely wanted to let us know that the Holocaust didn't actually happen.
Oh my god,
And
really?
we actually, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, yeah. I mean, it was a very tiny little country school, and I guess he thought like he was just going to get away with it. He actually ended up getting
Whoa.
arrested. I don't remember what he was charged with, but yeah. It's out there, you know, people, and it's not just, you know, crazy people
Yeah.
on the internet. It's people with access to children's education. It's people with access to pulpits, podiums, and it's important for people to have conversations about that so that we can all be, you know, aware of who we're listening to,
Yeah.
who we're giving our time and
Speaking
attention
of
to.
giving your time and attention and stuff, like, I hope I didn't railroad you when I asked you to join the activism team here and stuff, but like, I was wondering, you know, what do you think of all that stuff going on so far? And then I'm gonna ask you a question about non-LiberTEA activism, because it kind of leads into it. I'm just curious about this stuff because, like, I haven't had a chance to ask you, and now I have you on camera, and you have to answer me.
This was all an interview. It was all a fraud. Being in the activism group is amazing. Just because, like I said, I come from a culture growing up where politeness was very, very important, and getting really heightened about politics, getting really heightened about change was kind of seen as like immature or uncouth, or like if you're really mature, then things don't affect you, and that kind of like aloof kind of coldness, like that's what you did about things that you didn't agree with. You just didn't talk about them, didn't give them any attention. So it's kind of like a flip side to see like Americans definitely boots on the ground, you know, get your gloves on, get in the truck, we're gonna go.
Well, maybe if
do some
shit
stuff.
goes to hell here and you
it's
have
really
to
cool.
like run back home, you could teach them how to do it and they can save us like in Handmaid's Tale or some shit.
Fuck,
Spoilers!
like,
oh shit!
I
is
always
that
make
spoilers?
the joke that I'm
crap.
I make the joke all the time that like I'm like the baby bird that humans have held, and now my parent birds won't take me back.
I don't know about that. That story you
Like the
told me about
Canadians
your
will take me
parents
back.
was really cute.
Oh my god, they are amazing people. Yeah, I mean, I've been gone for 10 years. Maybe times have changed
Who
without
nothing
me.
knows,
I
right?
have no doubt.
But like you being
Right?
involved here, like as a mentor and stuff, like I asked you to do that because like you've always kind of like people group around you and you make people feel at ease. You have a sensibility to you, you know, and you're just gosh darn likable, and people want to talk to you and stuff, and they want to be around you.
Is this where you're gonna ask me a favor?
No, I thought that like,
This
and
is
when
like-
I after a little while you were talking to me about like all the stuff that you do normally, I was like, well, I really want to ask if she wants to be involved here. But also, like, I felt bad because, like, you sound so busy all the time. Do you want to, like, explain to us, like, the kind of stuff that you do outside of here that's also, like, involving your community and stuff? Because, like, you're a community leader, aren't you?
I
Well, yeah, you're
yeah, I'm
not
part
the
of leadership.
Goomba, but, like,
Um,
you're a community leader.
no.
Executing
Yeah.
dissenters as we speak.
I mean, I don't
Like
want you to
what?
say
No.
anything that you're not supposed to say
I
about people or something, but, like, don't dox anybody or
right.
whatever, but
No. Though, like I said, we were having a conversation earlier about paganism, and we have a problem. Actually, Vice actually just did an article last week about white supremacy and paganism. So a lot of pagans, especially white males with like tattoos and shaved heads, are suddenly finding themselves in awkward conversations about us versus them. I'll let your imagination take it wherever it needs to go. But and complacency, or being complicit to racism in the pagan community. Up here in my wonderful city of Portland, and inclusiveness and safe spaces, and there's a lot of people who don't want to make waves because the pagan community, obviously, we are not the majority. We're already kind of marginalized. We don't get our holidays. We don't get our holidays off work. And there's always that kind of like stigma. Oh, you're a witch, or you're evil, are you sacrificing cats or babies, or
God
whatever
forbid
else.
you tell somebody like what your specialty is every once in a while, because like they're like, what the fuck, are you some sort of D&D character?
Right. Yeah, and at best people think you're like a nerd doing cosplay out in the public park or something. LARP, right? But as we really are a community, and a lot of marginalized people groups don't like making waves inside of our community, and unfortunately that means if we have white supremacists in our community, them not wanting to call them out on bad behavior or hold them accountable in the community for bad behavior, and it makes it's sometimes kind of lonely, especially when people are like kind of see you as a troublemaker or see you as somebody who's divisive in the community. But I think now, sorry, what?
It's lonely at the top.
Yes, because you can't go quietly into that night.
But I think it's more important. Rage, or something like that.
Against the failing.
But yeah, like
or something like
deciding that. Well, against the dying of the light. Yep, Dylan. Yeah, but deciding to say, I have this voice in a community. I've got like these means and these resources, and I get to decide what I do with them. And I get to decide whether I support, the things that are going to make my community grow, or the ones that are inevitably going to end up, giving a voice to people who already have too loud of a voice, I think, in our community.
Yeah, the big system's already so fucked up. I wonder if sometimes the only thing we can do is take care of each other.
Well, and I mean, you say just take care of each other, but honestly, I mean, that's why mentorship is like so important, because people are like, hey, like, I have this decision to make, and it's not a life like changing decision, but it's the small decisions that end up having a big impact. I think people, if they understood just how important their personal responsibility in their day-to-day lives, they would realize that that's the only way to make the big change. Like, people have that question, if I had $1 million, if I ruled the world, if only I could have my way, I could do all these things. The truth is, I mean, you can, just inches instead of miles.
The main thing I'm always screaming about is people are way too focused on the national level. Like they've
Yeah.
brought all of our attention away from the local levels because they don't want you to do that shit. They want you to not make changes and not be better. They want you to get involved in the system and just throw your fucking money at their system. But we can actually make physical change that we can see if you spend, 30 minutes a fucking day or a week on your local level. That being said, do you have any advice for people out there, like how to get started in local groups or communities? Is there any like starting activities that you started?
Yeah. So yeah, we do the group that I'm involved in. We do prison ministry. We do just offering people in prison, an alternative to explore their own spirituality. We do tree planting. We do.
Yo, come be a Viking! Yay!
Right? Yeah. Last year we planted 325 trees. We did 125 hours of volunteer work in our community, doing trash cleanups, tree planting. We did some stuff where we planted like native species to kind of like choke out like non-native
kind of
species.
Cool. Like I like that. That's neat.
Yeah. And the great thing is you don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. You don't have to be like, well, we're the pagans that plant trees and stuff. You can get involved, like take your group and add it to groups that are already existing. Support the things that are already happening in your community. Don't be afraid of like coming together.
If there's something out there that somebody's not doing,
you don't have to agree on everything.
Then do it. But if not, just help people because many hands lighten the load. Right. And you know what? If you don't want to plant 200 trees, if you don't want to do, like trash cleanups and stuff, go meet your neighbor. Find out what your neighbor's name is. Bring them over some cookies or gluten-free just in case. Some beer or whatever. Yeah, but I mean, or just say hi. Introduce yourself. I mean, it's like a tiny little thing, and maybe your neighbor's weird. Maybe your neighbor's not perfect. I know my neighbor knows that their neighbor is not perfect. Ahem. But just taking that step into like knowing the people around you. Actually, I learned that from Mike. The power of just saying hi. It's incredible. It's incredible. You never know who you're gonna meet.
I want to share a story.
Cool. Do it.
So yeah, it has to do with the meeting your neighbors thing. We got new neighbors, and so I was like, oh man, Mike's gonna be mad if I don't do the socializing. And so I decided to go over there, and I think I brought over a raspberry wine. It's like one that my grandfather always likes. And it's fucking good shit. It's dangerous. I mean, you'll go through like a whole bottle real quick. Anyway, so I brought it over there and everything, and was introducing myself. They don't speak any English, so I was just like, "Hi," and they were like, "Hey," and I was like, just fucking gave them the wine, and they were like all just smiling, and we were like, "Yeah, yeah."
Aww, there you go.
And I said, "Mi casa es Paxton," and I'm pretty sure that's not my name.
Mi amo es Paxton.
Yeah,
no.
That's yeah. Last time I had Spanish was like 7th, and they just kind of looked at me weird, and but I think they got the gist because they said their name and everything.
You tried though.
But anyway, what was what was adorable about it though is I think 2 days ago they came over with like one of those fucking like tortilla warmer things that you get at a restaurant.
Oh my god, tamales. That's so good.
Homemade tamales.
You hit the jackpot.
We have no idea what we're saying, but I was like, oh, you got wine,
so
we got tamales.
See, that's the connection. You made a connection.
But I mean, that's all it is. It's just basic.
Now, when everything goes down,
I mean,
y'all
the
will be
humans
less likely
aren't
to raid
difficult.
each other. Maybe you'll share. They'll be like, gringo, gringo. Get in mi casa.
Yeah. I mean, I know that they're Mexican, so they're gonna have bandolores and fucking revolvers and
right. Tequila,
then we can have, yeah, exactly.
It'll be great.
It'll be a good time.
You can take all your shit,
If anything,
grandpa, and y'all just like barricade.
It's rad though, because I mean, they're, you know, I mean, it's rad because, I mean, if something's going on at your place, it's not just, oh, somebody's
Now
breaking
somebody's
into that
breaking
house.
into
It's
that
like somebody's
nice
breaking
guy
into
who brought
my
us
neighbor's
things.
house,
He's
my
such a
gringo
nice
neighbor who's
white
got the
dude.
raspberry wine. Someone's breaking into his
That really
house.
nice.
Right.
They're
They're
gonna
gonna steal
they're
the
breaking
wine.
into that really nice white boy's house.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mikasa Paxton's house.
The house's name is
They're gonna
Paxton.
hurt
It's good.
House Paxton.
Well, I was.
But I mean, like, suddenly your house suddenly has more friendly eyes on it when you're not there. Like,
Yeah.
that's, you know, it's not just like, oh, well, it's not just like that kind of sweet syrupy like positivity and stuff. It's really makes
We have
the
people
community
who
stronger.
like walk
It goes a
around.
long way. Like, it's simple shit. You don't have to go over there and talk politics with people. You just have to go over there and introduce yourself. And, you know,
Right.
I always recommend, like, at least in my area, the culture is to, like, bring a gift, especially with a new house owner or something like that. You always
Right,
bring
yeah.
a housewarming gift. So that kind of is an icebreaker type deal because everybody likes gifts and everybody likes wine. Even if they
Mhm.
don't like the wine, they're going to drink the wine.
I
Mhm.
went full
So,
every
yeah, I
stage
mean-
of libertarianism like the other day when we got the new people here because like I looked out the window because I heard something and I saw two people I didn't know in the back and they were by a car and it was on the edge of my fucking yard and
Oh,
I was
yeah.
like, goes outside, well, gets up, gets some stuff, goes outside, and I'm like, hey y'all, is everything okay? You need some help? And they're all like, and they said something about being, you know, like moving in and fixing the place up and everything, and I went from like hand on something to, wait, what? Y'all are neighbors? Hey, I'm Mike, and I'm like shaking people's hands and shit, and fucking Sean comes out, and I'm like, don't mind him, he's Polish.
Polish.
We had, like, you know, it just. I went from one to the other. I was like, are you a trespasser? But you gotta ask nicely in the South. You can't just be like, what the fuck are you doing here? You have to be like,
Right.
y'all need some help? Oh,
Mm-hmm. An
I think
armed
this revolver can help you lift that chair over there, sir.
Jesus, Jesus. Oh, God.
It was a Heinlein that said, Robert Heinlein,
It's
who
a
said
polite
that an
society.
armed society is a polite
Yeah.
society. Yeah.
I think that is so true. I don't know why people are so opposed to that idea. Like, they think about it and they're like, that's just like anti-gun people just treat it like that's the grossest idea, but then they're also like, hey, we need to give
Well,
tanks to the fucking police force to keep
I
law and
think
order, or
that-
else everybody's gonna murder each other. You're literally
Yeah.
just giving people fucking badges to murder people, whereas I could protect myself, my neighbor can protect themselves, and we can protect each other rather than me having to rely on fucking Joe the
Well,
black
They
murderer
would
over
rather
here.
us
don't-
not
Right.
strengthen our own communities. They would rather us pay attention to like federal things that don't really matter where we live. And we've become so connected
Right.
through across the world through the internet. We have kind of neglected where we are sometimes. And even I'm a little bit like guilty of that.
Mhm.
Like, although it's been really hard to meet people here, I'm working on it. We're getting there.
Yeah.
Right.
I still go out and
For
meet people,
instance,
though.
I mean, here in in the Northwest, everyone's talking about coronavirus. You know, we have a case up in Seattle, but everyone was so concerned about something that really there's only been one case in the Northwest. That none of the local news stations were covering the nurses' strike up in Washington. 2 ERs are closed from Tuesday till
See,
Friday
every
morning,
time.
which means, right? So at those are 2 really big ERs. So if people end up trying to go there for an emergency, it's going to cause a delay in care, which can have some really negative outcomes.
Is that why you're so busy and shit?
Because the news stations haven't been blasting it. Yeah, that's part of it. So we have 500 beds in our hospital. I'm not getting specific about which hospital, but we had 498 bodies in those beds today. Our hospital has been open for 165 years, and that was a record number of patients.
So
It was a busy day.
So, I mean, I guess that's kind of a nice segue into the coronavirus. I mean, I assume you guys have not had any experience, to your knowledge, in your hospital with that, right?
Well, I mean, it has affected us some. Well, we don't have confirmed cases of
Okay,
coronavirus, but I do want to remind people that influenza season,
Yeah, there's a really
just the
bad
regular
one going
influenza,
around.
the CDC says there were 60,000 deaths due to influenza A, which is H1N1, last year. And so we are fully in the swing, and regular flu does kill. So wash your hands. If you feel sick, stay home. Don't go to work sick. Don't infect all of your workplace colleagues.
If you feel bad.
And we have this thing about like not covering our mouths while we're out in public, not covering our faces. I know we have a lot of public stigma about that. Fuck public stigma. Keep yourself safe. Keep other people safe. Don't be afraid to cover your face.
It's perfectly fine. Like, I wear a mask all the time, and people will ask me, they're like, hey, do you ever get trouble for that? And I'm like, no, actually, I have never really gotten trouble for my mask. I got trouble once for wearing a hood in a store, and they were like, hey, you got to take that hood off. And I was like, really, just the hood? And they were like, yeah, just the hood. And I was like, okay. That was weird. All right, sure. I mean, okay, I don't even care about the hood.
Yep.
All right.
Your house, your rules.
That's
fine.
Weird as shit.
Is there any? I know you've mentioned self-sufficiency and things like that. So is there any like secret nurse tips that you can recommend for people to like store up on like certain supplies that people may not think about?
So you guys are gonna laugh at me. But for those people who are bugging in, no one tells you what to do when you have to shit. Nobody talks about prepping and understanding that you are going to have to go, probably more than once a day. So finding hygienic ways of dealing with your hygiene is of paramount importance, especially in times where you may not have access to extraneous medicines, or, you know, like, I mean, if your basic utilities go down, if you don't have water, if you don't have sewage access. So make it part of your preps.
So what exactly do you recommend for that? Like, is there a certain, do you have like a certain waste disposal method that you prefer, or?
I do actually. So there was a great initiative. I'd be happy to post some links and stuff in the Discord chat, but a great initiative that came out of came out of Hurricane Katrina. When that went down there.
All right, we're starting again.
So yeah. Anyway, taking care of your shit if the shit hits the fan. I know it sounds funny, but learning how to separate solid waste from liquid waste, usually using a 2 5-gallon bucket system, how to bag up your waste, using something to like absorb and help to absorb liquids and to help break down waste quickly, so it's not a big problem, because of course that kind of stuff carries pathogens, carries disease, and if anybody among you is sick, it's a really quick way to get everybody sick. So there's actually a couple of pamphlets and resources that I can post. You guys, give you some links and stuff if you want to do that. There's some pamphlets that have come out that show really easy instruction on how to adapt that for your own preps.
We'll try and put some links down below and stuff about that too.
I think it's shocking.
No, like
it's gross and nobody wants to talk about it, so I guess that's why it doesn't end up in a lot of prepping videos, but
maybe
that's a really important subject though, because like, you know, someone that studies history, yeah, I mean, that is something that we could talk about. But throughout history, whenever things hit the fan, well, whenever shit hits the fan,
literally, yeah.
One of the biggest killers is pathogens through non-proper waste disposal.
Yeah.
I can't recall the exact disease, but they found out in England that human waste was getting into the water supply, and it was causing a massive plague outbreaks. Not plague,
Mhm.
but a certain disease. I can't recall what it was.
There's
Uh,
Legionnaire's disease, there's dysentery. There's all kinds of diseases you can choose from, really.
yeah.
Um,
But that was actually, that particular moment was how they actually found out about like cellular diseases, that it wasn't just odor that causes
mhm. Oh, the switch from
diseases.
miasma, the idea of
Yeah,
like miasma
yeah.
causing sickness, like that kind of Grecian idea of what causes sickness. Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually a video. I guess we can go ahead and link that. It's from Extra Credits History, and they do, I think, a really good
Yeah.
telling of the story about it. But
Mhm.
yeah, I think that's a good thing to point out for sure. So
Yeah, I mean, I think in times of emergency, like cleanliness is super, super important. Because there it's not just a matter of being like clean and smelling nice. I mean, during an emergency, it can actually
Yeah.
be life sustaining.
yeah, I mean, if you think about it, if you have really dirty skin and you haven't bathed in a long time, you have all this additional bacteria on your skin, a cut is much more potent because you have all these additional pathogens and things on your skin that can get you infected. Uh, yeah,
And without
it's
access to regular antibiotics, like an infected cut can
It reminds
be
me of
really
that
threatening.
J-Reg
Mhm.
Antrim video.
yeah,
He's dead.
yeah.
What happened? He got a cut. And? That's it. And he's like very common, cannot be avoided.
That's
Like, very sad, cannot be avoided.
Well, are there any other medical hints? Like, is there any like medicine tips that you have for survival
Yes.
or shit hits the fan?
Don't
That's
just
something
have a first aid kit. Don't just have a first aid kit. Know how to use it.
You
There's
can
plenty
get
of
'em on
first aid
YouTube.
courses out there, but don't just think that like a whole sack full of bandages. Yeah. Don't just think that like a whole sack full of bandages is going to help you if you don't know how to use it. Take your first aid kit apart. Take a look at what's in there. Try to decide,
Read
you
all
know,
the instructions.
where the certain parts
A
would
lot of
be
those little
useful, what kind of
packages that you
situations
can
you have.
get of things to put inside your stuff, they have instructions on them. Don't read them when you're applying them. Read the instructions when you get them. And occasionally just go through it every once in
Yeah,
a
I
while
mean-
and make sure everything's not just like, because some stuff expires.
Do you
Right.
have
Oh,
any
totally.
particular medical skills that you recommend, like that are absolute vital?
I mean, in the moment, depending on what the emergency is, it's going to change what vital skill you have. I think anybody who has firearms in the house should know how to treat a gunshot wound
That's a good
and how
point.
to control bleeding. I think it's
Well, we haven't talked about that.
I think
Yeah,
it's
that's
super
something that's
important
not
for
brought
people. Yeah. It's one thing to be able to shoot, I mean, but also dealing with the outcomes of shooting should be the other part of that.
I was
equation.
shocked you didn't say CPR.
How
Good stuff.
to
Is it?
I
You should
think
know
a
how to
lot
do
of people
CPR too.
know CPR, honestly.
The problem
Like
is with CPR, I
doesn't
mean,
know
like
that.
if someone's bleeding out, then if their heart, yeah, if
It
their
does if
heart
you wanna get
starts,
rid of
I
it.
mean, that just means the bleeding's gonna go faster. So I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah, Pence is like got some really interesting hobbies that are super helpful that I'm gonna try and get them to like put into like type instead of like having in notebooks or whatever, because like, man, they're just a fount of knowledge. I guess that's why that's why I was like, you need to be a
I'm a
mentor who
nerd.
can teach the people how to do things themselves.
You know what I would really love to do? I think we definitely need to do this at some point, where we go out into like the woods or something and do like a very basic survival camp. Not like camping there for a day or two, but like how to
Right.
dispose of waste, you know, how to purify water if you don't have water, you know, recognizing the different types of trees and what's the best to use for the various shelters, because I think a lot of people get the basic concepts of all these
Yeah.
things, but they don't know the finer details that really makes or breaks. Because I've made outdoor shelters, and there's a huge
Yeah.
difference between what kind of fucking trees you use.
Hold
You can
on.
make yeah.
Trees.
Yeah, so you can have different tree types, and knowing the difference really can save you a lot of time and energy and effort. You know, you can spend all night making a shelter, or you can get one done in 10 minutes, depending on the type of shelter you want. So it's important to know those finer details that a lot of survival people don't seem to mention, because I think they kind of overlook it. When you've been making 200 shelters every single day for 10 years, you kind of forget the little minor details. I've never seen a survival or camping place talk about like latrines or anything like that. They never talk about waste disposal. I don't know if it's because it's a taboo or what the deal is, or how to clean yourselves.
Well, fuck that shit.
Mhm.
Most of the people
Yeah.
who I meet who are interested in survivalism stuff, like, when you ask them if they know how to make a fire, they're like, well, I mean, I know how to make a fire if I have a match, or I can make one with a, what are they fucking called?
Oh, yeah.
Fuck, I know what they're called. I just bought another one. Those little,
Fire
those little
steel?
rods that spark.
Mhm.
Yeah, they spark.
Oh, those
Like, I
magnesium
keep
rods.
those
Yeah.
around, but you're not always gonna have those. In fact, most people don't even know what the fuck those are. So, honestly, they're really neat.
Yeah, and all of those are, yeah, all of those are really great skills. I think it's also important to understand ahead of time and decide ahead of time the hierarchy of what needs you have. Because, I mean, you can know how to do 200 different things, and you might know how to do them really well, but in an emergency, decision fatigue sets in really early, and you need to know how to decide on what's important, and you need to be able to do it quickly.
Extra energy and time, everything you can.
Yeah,
It's like going
'Cause
to the
maybe-
store whenever you're hungry. You're going to start focusing on food a lot more if you were already hungry to begin with.
Back when we used to go out to eat, and we, like, me and my room, we were gonna go out to eat, and then we'd be like, we're gonna go grocery shopping and get something to eat. We would always decide to go eating first, because we knew that if we walked into that grocery store, we were gonna want to buy like twice as much shit, and we were gonna end up getting a bunch of crap we didn't need to.
A lot of people know how to start a fire, and even some people know how to start a fire without a match. But starting a fire without a match, when
It's
you are
hard.
tired, when you're cold, when you're wet, when you haven't eaten, when the shakes start in, that's a different situation. So learning how to support yourself the best that you can, taking inventory of that, is a really good first step to survival.
Why do we not have groups
There
like
are
that?
some.
Like, as far as you have Boy Scouts and shit like that, but nothing to the extreme of saying, hey, let's go outside and camp for a night whenever it's fucking raining with no shit, and let's see how well we fucking do.
Yeah, in Oregon, if you don't know how to make a fire in the rain, you don't know
I
how
mean,
to make
like,
a fire
when
in
it's not
Oregon.
raining,
So-
there's
Yeah,
basically
exactly.
just this dew everywhere in the air. Like, if people don't park in a space in a parking lot for 2 days, it's covered in green stuff. It's the stuff there is so it's just as like invasive as the plant life out where we were staying in the country here. It's like, holy crap, shit will just grow up in your place and crap.
Green.
It's nice though, I like that.
Yeah, I think I fell in love with Oregon when I accidentally, you remember behind our place there was that little patch of like dirt. I remember the first time I visited, there's a sunflower seed that we were, I forget, I think it was like part of the bird seed or whatever, ended up on that brown grass, and overnight it actually spread. And I was,
because by the time I showed up, there was many sunflowers.
And I remember coming from Canada, where you have to, if you don't water it, it don't grow, you know?
Here I'm all like, oh god, I hope I don't drop any seeds, because I'm gonna have to pick them out of, like, plants out of everything, fuck.
I'm gonna have to weed this next week, yeah.
Well, it's even like in Oklahoma, we have a bird feeder, and it has a whole bunch of fucking random seeds in it, and now we have all these random fucking plants.
Yeah,
You can
that's the
see,
noise
you can
plants
actually
make
see a
now.
trail from where our shed is to where the bird feeder is, because we'll be
They
dropping
drop them.
and you can see like crabgrass and things like that growing in this trail. It's like, fuck, can you
Nature,
stop being so
I love
fertile?
it though.
Jeez.
I mean,
nature finds a
it
way.
is nice. It's a nice thing here. Not every place in the world is super fertile like this. We are kind of blessed.
Yeah.
Mhm. Oh yeah. I think the question that you had earlier is like, well, why did people stop in these super inhospitable places? I think probably because they saw something like that. They saw the hope of, making something happen here, making something good happen here. And
Right.
I think we all have to keep that, that understanding that like, yeah, shitty stuff is happening all the time, but we always have the power of choice to make something good happen. Like maybe it's small. Maybe it's something only we notice.
Well, yeah,
Fuck
and
it, do it anyway.
if each of
you know?
us
Right.
gets that in our head, the people, we are just one. We are small, but we are also like mighty and dangerous. Not even saying
Well, yeah, and
violence. I'm just
I
saying in
want
general.
that's my no, just that's the stuff that sets me on fucking fire. Just having people know that they have power. Letting people
Matters.
know that what they do matters. They don't have to be the president. They don't have to choose the president. They don't have to choose, their senator or
They don't
whatever.
have to play the game.
To still change the landscape of where they live, to change their communities,
Yeah,
to change what
fuck
fucking
the
happens
game,
there.
Change the narrative.
Everybody has that power.
Each and every one of us can do that.
Exactly.
Oh,
get pumped.
oh God, I'm feeling threatened.
This is what I get to deal
Red
with.
Panda right now. You lucky bastard, you get to
God.
deal with this. How awesome.
You know what? It's one of my fascinations with history has always been the idea that we're going to be losing a lot of that knowledge. Like, how many of us know how to actually grow wheat and harvest
I think
it
that's
into
a really
flour
good point.
and make
We should be
bread?
downloading, saving this shit, downloading this shit into paper and keeping it, and not even that, but trying it.
No. Fuck you, Mike. That makes me way less valuable.
Spread the knowledge. Hack the planet.
Right. If you guys ever see the Farmer's Almanac for sale in your grocery store or
Oh
whatever,
man, I love those.
Yeah.
pick it up. I mean, it's a complete like repository of all kinds of knowledge, a lot of stuff about your local agriculture. I mean, it's pretty rad stuff, and I think it's like $4
really
or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, the funny thing about like libertarians and anarchos is like people typically think of it as like dudes with the fucking face mask and throwing Molotovs and shit, and really we're just trying to like fucking feed our chickens
I mean,
and learn
we
how
are
to plant
dudes in
potatoes.
masks sometimes, but we're still just sitting there trying to garden and shit.
The only time we're throwing Molotovs and wearing masks and when there's people fucking telling us I can't have my chickens or
like,
tomatoes.
if you leave
Fuck
us
those
alone
Right.
with our shit, let me freaking gather my
chicken and
water
tomato.
and plant my shit and smoke my weed and protect my chickens with my freaking semiotic. Well, I don't actually need them for the chickens. The government doesn't really care about the chickens.
Yeah.
But
it's
They
so
do
weird
here.
that you talk about. It's so weird that you talk about rainwater, because that was the first moment where I realized that
weird.
America was was weird. So Colorado, I lived out in Denver, Colorado for a while, and you aren't allowed to have rain barrels.
Yeah, it's
we
common
can't have
all
it here
across
either.
the states.
Right, and specifically because the Mile High City, the water that comes off the mountains contributes quite a bit to California. And I was like, oh yeah, we definitely want to support Americans in California and the water table there. We want to support that ecology. I felt great about that until I found out how much of that water table is owned by Nestle.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh no, we're not allowed to have rain barrels because Nestle as a corporation has more sway over our national government than the regular people do.
Yeah.
And that's when I realized that there had to be some.
Well, yeah,
we
can't have real free
That sounded
capitalism
real badass,
with a
I'm sorry.
government that is created to give such an end to greedy, bad capitalists. Like authoritarian capitalists like this, they'll take everything they can get. They don't really give a shit about the people.
Well, yeah,
and the government has created these fucking niches and these loopholes and these rules to let them do these things to us. And yeah, it's bad. I mean, like, if we had other options, we could choose other options because Nestle's pretty fucked up, you know what I mean? Like, if we didn't, if you found out about that, you could then choose to be like, no, fuck Nestle, fuck California, they're not even getting it. If California needs water, we'll truck it there. Fuck them. You know? Like, we'll help our fellow Americans, but fuck feeding into this shit and telling us it's one thing. They love to play these games with us. I'm sorry, I'm on a rant now. I'm like,
no, it's good.
It's what you do.
You should get excited. I mean, when Flint, Michigan was going through its problems with its water quality, I couldn't, maybe it's cynical, but I couldn't help but wonder how much money Nestle water made of the Flint.
Well, how much have you guys heard about the
Dude, I just
whether it's the government buying it or private citizens, I bet bottled water companies made a lot of money.
I think we need to do a video, like maybe even a series about Nestle, because they are definitely like one of the top 5, if not the most evil companies on the fucking
when
planet.
I'm like, that's evil, and they're like, no, you're supposed to support capitalism, and I'm like, I don't support bad capitalism.
Well, I mean,
not
horrible.
capitalism.
Like, I want free capitalism, not capitalism that's created by the government and like made to fucking feed off of people.
I think there's sustainable capitalism and there's unsustainable capitalism. I mean, it's like the difference between strip mining or burning down the rainforest to get 2 years worth of coffee crops planted.
It doesn't even make sense.
Or finding sustainable. So but I mean the idea of like Nestle having business practices that are killing the human race and is a detriment to every person involved in the transaction. I mean that's unsustainable, and we can't say that that's a good business practice. That shouldn't be allowed to happen. I mean, I'm not saying all forms of capitalism are evil, but ones that are just fucking short-sighted. I mean, if you kill all your customers,
it's not a logical capitalism for one.
Exactly.
Like, it's like you were saying, like if you kill all your customers, then how are you going to make more money? And moreover, like the people that are clear cutting the rainforest, for example, why didn't they plant fucking trees? Like, you can't see ahead for 20 years and you're in charge of a multi-billion-dollar company? Like, it doesn't make sense. You're literally running out of the resources that you're selling. The lumbering companies should be the #1 green companies on the world. They should be the record breakers for fucking planting trees. It makes sense. That's their business.
It makes sense for people who are only seeing a finite amount of time.
They're
a very finite
oh my god!
It's like if I want to make a profit tomorrow,
the environment. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
But it's not even fucking expensive. It's not an expensive practice. It's the cheapest investment possible. Like, it's seeds, dude. Like fucking. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like,
they literally fall from plants.
From the trees you're cutting down, for Christ's sakes. Like, just.
I mean, we had fucking banana republics literally building roads and hospitals and shit for their fucking like entire countries, but we can't plant fucking trees.
God
the fuck?
Damn. We've come up with so many things we could do episodes about. We're gonna have to go back through here and make a list.
But like you were saying, is there is sustainable capitalism and there's not, and people often the socialists and Democrats in general are typically screaming about capitalism, And then we talk about supporting capitalism, and they're like, "Oh no, you're the fucking
is it
enemy.
that
Kill the
crazy? And
bourgeoisie, yada
like,
yada
I know
yada."
you have to
I,
see
I
this
know
here and stuff. Is it
I know
like
it's
that in Canada? Because we see some news and like it looks like your left is insane when we see it from the right, and when we see it from the left's news, it looks like you guys are like entrenched with Nazis or something. So do you have a white supremacy problem in Canada? Actually,
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. A lot of the rural towns, there's a white supremacy.
and are you guys just
foothold.
polarized like we are, or do you have your own dance?
So I need you to understand that Canada has 10% of the population of the United States on
Wow.
the second largest landmass in the world. So we're spread out. And I think we're in a lot of places, the people populations in Canada are very isolated. So you have these like microcosms of culture, and microcosms of of just ways of doing life that work in even our ecosystems. Like we have everything from like the maritime provinces, where fishing, to the West Coast. I mean, we have a lot of like orchards, vineyards, tech, entertainment out in the West Coast. And then we have our far north territories, which is like a whole new set of challenges and systems going on up there. So it's I think it's less an ideological schism as it is what works for one end of the country just does not fucking work for the other.
Well, I
end.
think that's our problem here too,
And
but
so
we're
when you
trying
have
to make it
an
that way.
ideology, when you have like, so Trudeau, and I'm not going to make any friends here. Trudeau has certain ideologies that cost him very little to implement, but the problem is, if it costs him very little to implement in one part of the country, it makes him insensitive to how much that costs the other parts of Canada. And
That's
if
just
you are
how
gonna
socialism works.
and it's it's definitely cost Canadians.
Do you think the give and I don't
quality of
know
life.
how much you know about
I'll
like
leave
this
it at that.
whole political thing, but in your opinion, I don't want to get you lynched or anything. Do you think that it's worth it? Like the whole give and take of the socialism crop that y'all have set up? Do you think it?
Well, I mean, I don't think Americans are ignorant of the idea that separatism has been a part of Canadian culture for a long time. And I think the most well known was the Quebec referendum, whether they wanted to separate into their own unique society was the verbiage that they used, or if they wanted to remain part of Canada. Of course, whenever you have separatism, we're seeing it with Brexit. You lose stability you lose the stability of being part of a larger country when you go your own way. Your dollar, your military, national defense, diplomacy with other nations, especially in Quebec's case, we have treaties with our First Nations people regarding land rights, regarding mineral rights. And if they were to become their own unique society, as the verbiage goes, they would have to renegotiate those treaties. And I hate to tell them this, but the First Nations people have a lot more attorneys and lawyers than they did when they first negotiated those treaties. And I don't think it would work very well for them. But that's just my 2 cents.
See, the thing about it is, like, it's just the way things are going, though. Catalonia is a good example. Hong Kong is a good example. France is a good example. They're talking about splitting France up now. Same thing in the UK. Scotland's trying to get away. North Ireland was talking about rejoining Ireland. Wales is talking about breaking off from the UK. It makes sense whenever there's a lot of corruption to just break away, because whenever there's corruption and there's bureaucracy going on, that means the problems aren't being solved. That means that people are too focused on the high population areas rather than what's going on in Oklahoma or Texas or where the fuck ever. So their needs aren't being met. So it only makes sense to break away and fix our own
Mhm.
problems. Oklahoman problems should be fixed with Oklahoman solutions. What the fuck does a guy in California know
I know
what
you're
somebody in
arguing for
Oklahoma
statism, but I
needs?
kind of want to
And
like say we should just like tell New York and California to get out.
So
no,
so here I want to pose something to you guys, and I want to see what you have to say about it. So, and this is just things I've seen. I feel like America, especially, has been like on a federal level, not been quick to ecological reforms, and has not been quick to be considering environmental concerns.
We haven't
like
really
climate
pushed much education about it, to be honest. We've
dependence
only
on fossil
pushed like one-sided things, which make
Right.
people weary.
So
well,
Yeah,
let her finish
go ahead,
first,
I'm
Mike.
sorry.
right. And I kind of wondered, because like an environmental crisis, it doesn't matter if you're from Oklahoma, it doesn't matter if you're from the Northwest, it doesn't matter if you're from Maine or Florida. If you have an ecological crisis that you're facing as a nation, are you as are you as likely to talk about separating and going your own way? If you are at war with another country, if you are if you're facing a sudden global virus, are you as likely to talk seriously about separatism as you are during times of peace, plenty, etc.?
Yes. Yes to all the things.
Oh, really?
There's nothing that is not better on the local level.
Yeah, but
It's
people
100%
normal
better
people,
on every
most
level.
people
Yes,
are
yeah,
scared
no.
of that shit, though. You gotta acknowledge that. Break it.
Well, let me
break
break it
that
down, Mike.
motherfucker.
So, yes, for using the war example as one of the, and I can break them all down because I've had all these conversations, but war, for example, the United States is at war with, one of the Middle Eastern countries because there's brown people there. And we have a referendum to split the country apart. That would automatically end the war. So one, that's a lot less resources, which is actually good for the the environment. If there's a lot less bombs being developed with harsh chemicals and resources going to weaponry just to kill people in other countries, which usually requires metals being extracted. War is a very costly resource thing.
Right.
It's probably one of the worst things for the environment. I mean, atomic bombs and all haven't done us great wonders.
Yeah, I'm sure Hiroshima would agree. Yeah.
Yes. What were some of your other examples?
Well, okay, so that was war, and you were like, well, it would automatically stop war with this other country. I mean, but would it? I mean, would it stop another country from attacking America?
Yes, without a doubt. We just, you can't invade America. Like, it is without question. You cannot invade America. We have too many guns, with too big of a population, too urbanized, and we have too much natural environment to go through. It would be the worst possible idea, or else they would have done it by now, because we've been in shitty situations.
Yeah, they'd have
and they
to wipe out almost all of us to get compliance anyways, because like even the sleepers will awaken with the fucking monsters in the house. Threaten our children and see what
core of the question.
Happens.
It has to go into the core of the question of how the locals would deal with environmental issues that are a worldwide problem. That's the only way to deal with it, the way I see. A person in California doesn't care about the strip mining in Oklahoma, and an Oklahoman doesn't care about the water droughts in California. But an Oklahoman that sees his river being polluted where, he's grown up besides his whole life, that is a problem he cares about. But when you have this bureaucratic ladder that you have to go through to get anything done because of the EPA, that doesn't actually fucking do anything, then you can't do that much about it. We have to go through all these hoops and ladders before we even get a response, and then it'll be like, we'll deal with it 20 years down the line whenever your river is fucking acid. So if it's more of a local problem, you can fix those things a lot more immediately, and it's a lot more respondent in that, again, it's more personal.
And
You see the
likewise,
river,
like in
you're
that
there, you're
situation you
next to
mentioned
it.
otherwise, like before, like if California needed water, they could just call Colorado and make a fucking deal with them, you know. And then and then you know, if you guys were already thought that was happening, you'd be like, wait, what do you mean you're not getting any water? And then all of a sudden you'd be like, well, whatever. Oh shit, fuck you. Hey, get your hands off that. Give some of that to California. You know, you could do that because it'd be what is.
Okay. So remind me. I'm sorry. Just put me on the same page. What was the question?
I was saying about. Oh no, the question was, you
one.
had mentioned that I had stated that nobody could invade the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And then you elected me to rule over Oklahoma.
Yes, just like Huey Long. Love you too.
Right. Okay. Kinder, gentler, dictator
Hopefully.
for life. Yeah. So, but you had said that no one would dare invade America because I mean, America has far and beyond the world's largest military.
But it's not even about the military. But keep
But
going.
I mean, but do you feel like you would have America's backing with their military if you were to become the emancipated sovereignty of Oklahoma?
So, is there more to it?
And secede from the united part of the United States.
So what I always advocate for is essentially the Confederation, in which there should be a federal government, but it should be very bare bones with no chance of it growing. The only thing that we should have a federal government to do is upkeep the currency. That way we don't have Texas dollars and Californian dollars. It just fucks with the economy and it doesn't make any sense. We have a close enough culture where it should be open trade through everyone, basically. Potentially, arguably, it really depends, but arguably, tariffs from other countries and things like that. Some people are for and against that, and we can talk about that all day. And then third, the unified defense of all the states. Essentially, if Texas got super power hungry and invaded Oklahoma, that would mean that the other 48 states would come to the aid of Oklahoma. Or if China invaded New York, the rest of the states would, in unison, protect that particular area. Now, let's say we didn't even have the Confederation, there was no federal government. One of two things will happen, and it's potentially positive and it's potentially negative. It really depends on how our relations keep up. I would say, if the federal government disappears and all the states are still their states and everything, we would have a 50-year span at the very least, where we would still be working with each other. I would think if someone invaded New York without federal enforcement, I think we would still all help each other out. But after that, cultures and traditions and shit like that have more chances of souring between the states, and so it becomes more difficult. But on a tactical point of view, if someone invades New York and China, for example, that's a staging ground to invade neighboring areas, so it'd be beneficial to aid them, but that's not how history has typically worked, and that's, you do the divide conquer type shit. And lastly, typically what I recommend is a different form of confederation. I don't think we should have 50 independent states necessarily. I think of it more as maybe 3 to 4 different countries kind of combined by an alliance. You would have the southern portion, northeastern portion, northwestern portion, and then fucking California. I think if you keep things large on that type of large scale, it would make it much less desirable to invade, which would dramatically cut down on the chances of it actually being invaded. If you had Texas alone with a couple of other states, especially the fucking Southerners, no one's going to invade that. You have New York and most of the northeastern states together. It's such an economic and industrial powerhouse. It would be very difficult. Plus, the urban environment is very difficult to work through. Northwest, who the fuck wants to invade North Dakota? Honestly. And then there's California. Like, who wants to fucking deal with LA? Like, the traffic there. Can you imagine fucking sending a tank down LA traffic? Like, it's just not gonna fucking happen.
Wars now. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying that like the idea of like ground warfare, kind of antiquated. Now, most wars aren't won on the ground.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's not like they would be facing the people of Oklahoma or the people of North Dakota or what have you.
The thing about it is they would have to, in our sense. You can't just do, a spy or electronic warfare against the United States. That's already happening, and we're already technically losing that shit. That's arguably, some people will say, how Trump got elected. But that's not how you really conquer. It's just how you control. But I think you limit those type of instances by splitting us up and giving less power to a single power over the entire country. If we have 4 different countries or 50 states that are all empowered, it's much more difficult to corrupt all 50 of those.
We do need to
I think
work
it's
on that,
that's a mirror of something that's happening with I think that's something that's mirrored in a sense among American citizens through media, because I mean it used to be that the only way news got around was through big media outlets, and now I mean we have real-time footage capture in the hands of every individual, arguably every individual. No, sorry, I didn't mean to derail.
I'm going with you.
No, that's a really good point. Virginia is another good example. We're seeing the governor and the state Senate and Congress passing gun legislation that is largely not wanted. They have a map of it, and we can pull that map up, where it's just the urban pockets that want these gun legislation. It's the 99% of the. I think last I looked, it was 115 counties that had signed the Second Amendment sanctuary. And then they had that huge ass fucking Second Amendment rally, which was way bigger than I could have imagined it possibly ever been. It was really good. No violent activities or anything like that. Even though they screamed for it, so they wanted people to die, and that's so fucking bad. But it actually goes into your point, though. There was so many local journalists, they could not afford to lie about it, because they would have if there was not local journalism like there currently is.
Beautiful thing, and
they would have definitely made something
doing that. But like,
I think local is better on every level. The more local anything you have, it ends up working better, because people care about their local shit. They don't care about the entire. How can you? I don't know anything about New York.
And that is one of the reasons why we all come together here to try and not only do our own things, but support each other in doing their own things and getting out there and doing stuff, not just sitting around and talking about it. And we're honored to have you here doing it with us, Pence. You're a true joy. If you only knew, dear God. I appreciate you a lot, and I appreciate you coming on here and talking to us. I hope it wasn't like too stressful or weird. We're all the FBI will be with you soon. It's okay. I'll be there too.
I think I hear somebody knock at my door. No.
Don't answer it. Be like, you got a warrant. No habla English. Don't yell no habla English at the eyes, people. We're gonna have to hide you in our attic. Like, I would hide people. I would.
Do you have any
do you have any closing comments before we get the heck out of here? Because we've gone long. I might make this 2 parts.
Yeah. I want to say thank you guys for setting up a community where people can speak their mind, where people can discuss ideas, where people can learn, because that's the only way anything's going to change in any way. So yeah, props, and whatever I can do to support you guys, let me know. I'm really happy to be part of this because it's basically kind of aligns itself with all the things that I want for strong, resilient communities.
Excellent.
On the local level.
Good stuff.
Okay.
Are there
Yeah,
any
good.
like YouTubers or any causes,
Good books, anything
websites
you'd like
that
to
you
give a
want
shout
to
out
give a
to
shout out
before we head out? Because we usually do this at the end, but when we have guests, we let them do it.
I speaking of books, I want people involved in our local
Yes.
book club.
Curious Oysters.
Yeah, I think we're doing the Curious Oysters. We're doing the Constitution next. We're getting together on Sunday, and I can't wait because I think it might be the first time I have read the Constitution
Oh wow.
in its entirety. Not being so I expect to learn a lot and find out what just regular American citizens have to say about basically the basis of their country. So it should be awesome. I mean, lots of good discussions. And Giovanni, I mean, well, you guys have all met Giovanni.
But yeah, if you guys liked our video, enjoyed the interview, if you would like to come into the interview at some point, feel free to join our Discord. That is going to be below. If you liked the content here today and had fun, please like, share, subscribe. It really helps us out. If you want to buy me some more coffee that I'm in desperate need of, feel free to donate as well. I think we've got some more donation platforms set up that I think you can use Bitcoin with. Isn't that correct, Mike?
Yes, we do. And we're going to start adding that down there so you guys can help us help other people and make the show better and make the community better and shit.
And buy me coffee.
Oh, yes.
But yes, please share the content. We've been very fortunate in that a lot of people have been sharing our content lately, and it's been really allowing our channel to grow and allowing our Discord to grow. So, please, if you want to do something good, this really helps us out.
Yeah, and we have a brand new subscribe star that people can get into, and we're gonna start uploading. We aren't sure, but we're gonna put cuts in there that are amusing and stuff that we took out, and we'll probably make some special things for you guys and put it in there.
Mostly all stuff that's going to hurt my elections.
Yeah, probably. I mean, come over there and get a little bit of extra stuff from us, and we'll have a good old time, and you can help us spread liberty.
Yay.
Free the people.
Until then, you guys be safe, be free. This Mad Liberty Party is adjourned.